shoes, to say the least. Philly took their third loss in a row last night to Detroit, 102-94. They were outscored 39-8 by the second unit. But when asked if the problem was the Philly bench, head coach Doc Rivers said there was someone else to blame for their struggles. Listen to this.
Well, they didn't struggle. They didn't get a lot of shots, in their defense. I think during that stretch, it was more James, than them. So, that's just a tough night.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Detroit's bench outscored Philly 39-8, which is crazy. But knowing that, is Doc putting too much blame on Harden? Jordan, I'll start with you.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is all on James Harden. Because how do you judge stars in the NBA? Postseason and closing time, fourth quarters. The last 6 fourth quarters for James Harden, these numbers are not suitable for work. They're absolutely awful. He's 4 of 19. He's got 8 turnovers, plus minus a minus 31, Shanae. Is that a star? Is that a group, a franchise that's mortgaged everything, their future, and put a competitor in their own conference in position, not to be good, to be far and away elite in the Nets for years to come with the capital that they deliver that team, thinking James fixes you right away. Mm-hmm. James has to be a star just a clip below Joel Embiid, who's in that MVP conversation doing things we've never seen from a big. Is he doing that? Is James Harden delivering that? He's a ball stopper. He's not a good defender. And now you're seeing fractures in a locker room. The reason why I love the Bucks, they don't have any of that. We are days removed from Joel Embiid calling out Doc Rivers saying, hey, look, this is a rotation issue. Why am I not out there playing when we're getting the business from Giannis? A couple days later, Doc Rivers is calling out a guy shades of what happened before with Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons is no longer in a uniform. This is vintage Sixers stuff, and the problem is the guy that's in that locker room you hope will fix it alongside Joel Embiid is James Harden, and he ain't built for it, and that's the problem.
You know what? I don't think it's fair that we say he's not built for it because this guy has been one of the most durable players, and I will push back on he is a star. James Harden is a star that has risked it all to change teams so that he can pursue a championship. And I think it was a big adjustment when he went to Brooklyn, and the biggest factor that we saw that was probably the best part of his game that he needs to tap into now was that he could lead the league in assists. Like, he can pass, he can make his teammates better. And that's sort of what he needs to remember in this moment. You can't shoot your way into success when you're playing with a teammate like Joel Embiid, who should be the focus. Because right now, that big man is balling. 37 and 15, even in a loss, that's the biggest frustrating point for me. You see someone that your running mate is trying to be MVP. If I'm playing with someone trying to be MVP, I'm trying to make you look great. I'm trying to win these games that matter. I'm trying to win games that, quote unquote, may not matter. If you think about the Detroit Pistons, like, that's a must-win game. Yeah. You should not lose that game, and you should not lose by my shooting. And I think that's what Doc Rivers is saying. He shot the ball. We're putting the ball in his hands. He wants to try to be the hero because sometimes when you're playing ball, you feel like you can save it all with one possession. And then you have that idea all right, it didn't go well, so you feel more and more. And I think that's a lot of pressure on James to try to create these solutions when he realizes that his solution is actually what you discovered by leaving Houston, passing the ball and making teammates better. So when I heard Doc Rivers call out James Harden, I was like, first of all, that man's tired, and that man is honest because he realizes that the stakes are high for them. They risked it all to get James Harden. They realized that this is probably the best pick-and-roll duo you can have with a center and an MVP candidate in Joel Embiid, and now you're losing games to the Detroit Pistons because our shooter's not making shots. You got to shout out the supporting cast or realize, all right, it may not be my night. Let me get it to Joel or let me get it to someone who can knock down the ball. So I looked to that soundbite. I was like, good. You guys need to let all that. I was going to say something nasty like, the pimple pop. You need to get all that nastiness out of there. I know, that's the weirdest thing.
And you were looking at me when you said that. What's really good? That's really good.
So the reality is my little sister is trying to be into dermatology. So all my conversations with my little sister Erica is all about that stuff. She loves Dr. Pimple Popper. But you want all of that mess to come out so you can have a clear surface and a better foundation. And I think that's exactly what we saw with Miami. Well, Miami, after their, after their altercation, will they get things together? After these losses, will Philly be able to get things together? It will really be intriguing to see if they can figure it out because James Harden is forcing them to do it in the postseason and not the regular season.
Okay, and I'll say this. Look, Harden deserves some of the blame, yes. But, let's also look at Tyrese Maxey. When he arrived and the honeymoon season was going on in Philadelphia, we were looking at a big three in Philadelphia. That included Tyrese Maxey. These last 3 losses, Maxey has been terrible in situations where he needs to be good. And by the way, they're minus 39 with him on the floor and plus 19 with him off of it. He has not been able to produce or be that third guy, the third option for them to succeed. Now, back to James Harden. He has played 4 horrendous games in Philadelphia. And if you compare that, he's only been there 6 weeks, really.
Right.
I mean, the rest of the stars in the NBA have probably had as many bad games as him in 6 weeks in Philadelphia. And oh, by the way, let Harden do that in the postseason. Let him show up and not be there in the fourth quarter.
He's done
or
that plenty
have a
of
bad,
times before.
But right, in Philadelphia, oh my God, they won't even be able to compose themselves in that city. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So Harden needs to figure this out quickly. Otherwise, we're going to have some very disgruntled people in Sixers Nation.
Christine, he's not the same guy anymore. Coming off the injury, he's still a star.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I could never dream of doing the things he does with the basketball. But at the end of the day, I don't think he has what it takes to flip a narrative going into the postseason. And when you go into the postseason, I envision this is Game 6 of the Western Conference semis versus Spurs. Western Conference semis versus Golden State when he went 2 of 12 from the three-point line? That's what I envision coming from him now because he's not comfortable. He's not the same guy. And I think he feels that pressure, and that pressure is going to bust pipes.
I think a lot of people think the narrative when it comes to James Harden is, yeah, he doesn't show up in the postseason. But if you actually look at those years when he was in Houston, he had to do it all. And then there was an issue with running out of gas. When you look at Houston, you also see that they had a revolving door of stars to try to match his talent. I mean, I'm not that old, but like there was Dwight Howard, and you had so many different iterations. You had Chris Paul, then you had Russell Westbrook. And then now he goes to Brooklyn, and he's a new guy. And we all know when you get to a new team, it's hard to find that identity. Now you're the new guy again. I can understand why James Harden, that postseason has evaded him, especially with how other teams are set up and how dominant other players have become. But I would say this is the year for him to figure it out because this is the best post player he's ever played with. Joel Embiid and the season he's having right now, that is a blessing. And so if we're going to say this narrative should change, it should change this season because you have a pick and roll partner where you should be allowed to cook. And so I'm reserving all judgment until what he does here in Philly, and then we'll see if that's his true narrative.
But you just laid them all out. It's like that Vince Vaughn line in a breakup. It's not the problem. He's the problem.
Right.
I mean, that's it. He's aligned himself with great opportunities. It hasn't resulted in anything.
Yeah, I mean, but I really do think that when you are aligning yourself with great opportunities, a lot of it was falling in love with the three-point shot or creating through offense. This is a team that's very, more so defensive-oriented with Philly and their length and their athleticism and their tenacity. And then you're pairing yourself with a great post where your game should be shining right now. So I'm going to reserve all judgment for him in the postseason for this team and this circumstance, contrary to what he's experienced in the past.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you. Then if James Harden does not perform in the postseason this year, does that mean his window has completely closed?
I don't think his window is closed, but I would be looking at Joel Embiid's window closing, right? Because every year, Joel Embiid gets healthier. And every year as he gets healthier, he gets closer to being MVP. And if I'm Joel, I'm doing everything possible to not only win in the postseason, because he's had some really tough losses, right? Think about Toronto. But now you're trying to win a championship. You finally got me healthy, and it seems like our team isn't getting it together. And I think that's why you're hearing these different comments. All right, we got to get these rotations right. It might seem unusual that a star player is calling out a coach, per se, but guess what? He wants to win. All right, coach, calling out star player and James Harden. You wonder about that situation. Ooh, does this mean it's bad? No, this is good. Because guess what? The stakes are high. When this man is on the floor, you should be playing winning basketball. And they have not done that lately, especially against top teams, against other star players. You have to figure it out and figure it out right now. You better have those conversations.
And you nailed it. I mean, what a waste of a season, Shanae, it would be for Joel Embiid to do what he's doing, which is incredible. He is must-see TV. For that to be wasted, and worse than all that, look at what the East is now. There's no, this is the AFC in the NFL. There is no path where you're watching. Everyone's getting better before your eyes right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Okay, we got some college hoops coming up. Sorry, guys.
I was like, that was profound for me. Silence the table.
You two are leaving us.
Is that your first ever mic drop?
Yeah, right?
Okay,
I feel like I should walk off like Costanza. That's it.
Brooklyn Nets have been able to, deal with this circumstance, still compete in games, has been extremely impressive. If they were able to get Ben back, that would be the icing on the cake.
Look, if they bring Ben back, it would elevate my belief in the Nets. Defensively, absolutely. But when I look at the Bucks, the reason why I love the Bucks is their third piece is perimeter defender in the league. He elevates that defense. That's where he really makes his mark on this squad. Ben Simmons can bring that defensive versatility, interchangeability, and elevate them, no question. But rhythm. When does he get into this lineup?
Yeah, right.
When can he play? We're talking about a guy between the ears more so than any athlete in professional sports. And you're going to ask him to step in with all that's on the line for the Nets, for Ben Simmons. That's a wild unknown.
At this point, though, I feel like if the Nets can just figure out a way to have one good defensive quarter because of all the offensive firepower they have, at any point through the rest of the regular season into the postseason, they could figure it out. Like last night, they played well in the first and the fourth quarter defensively. In between, it stinks. And so they have to figure out a way to just hold a team that's as good as they are one quarter defensively, and maybe they can proceed.
Okay, let's talk about another team in the East, the team that Ben Simmons left. The 76ers, who are having some issues, to say the least. Philly took their third loss in a row last night to Detroit, 102-94. They were outscored 39-8 by the second unit. But when asked if the problem was the Philly bench, head coach Doc Rivers said there was someone else to blame for their struggles. Listen to this.
Well, they didn't struggle. They didn't get a lot of shots, in their defense. I think during that stretch, it was more James, than them. So, that's just a tough night.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Detroit's bench outscored Philly 39-8, which is crazy.